Hello, ladies and gents! The weekend is upon us, and that means it's time for another tank review from World of Tanks. Thanks to your comments, I did look into the design of this series a bit, and the comparison part has been seriously reworked, so let me know how you like the new version. As for today's subject, we really didn't have a closer look at the German heavy tanks until now, which is a shame, so let's correct that quickly. Our first customer is the VK3601H, the Tier 6 heavy tank on the German tech tree. Now this baby is not really popular, but as we will see, it's not all bad news. To prove that, I will have the usual Ace Tanker gameplay at the end of the review, and if you want to skip all the number crunching, the timestamp for it is as usual in the description below. First, however, a historical look. Or rather to say, I would love to have one, but this is unfortunately one of those tanks that never did really roam the battlefields in reality. The VK3601H was a project developed by the manufacturer Henschel, aimed to create something better armored and more powerful to face the increasingly challenging threats such as the Char B1 heavy tank or the Matilda II infantry tank. A handful of hulls and turrets were produced for testing, but the project was cancelled before they could even be assembled. Now the project was abandoned in favor of an even more powerful and heavier machine, the VK4501H. By the way, the designation H stands for the manufacturer Henschel, and where you see the designation P, it stands for the rivaling manufacturer Porsche. Now the reason why all these tank concepts changed so quickly is because the requirements for them increased drastically as the Germans were shocked to realize that they couldn't even scratch the T-34 mediums and especially the KV-1s used by the Red Army with anything less than the 88mm flak gun. So the VK design eventually led to the rush development of the Tiger tank to solve this situation. Alright, that's it for the history corner for today, so let's jump right into the middle and start with one of the most important decisions you have to make with this tank, the gun choice. Now, I truly believe that there are many players out there who were tempted by that 88mm flak gun, which is the highest caliber non-derp gun on this thing. Plus, I mean, it's a flak gun, it has to be good, right? Well, not really. There are huge differences between the 8mm flak guns found in this game, and this version right here definitely sits on the shittier end of the scale. The problem is that it has really subpar penetration with only 132mm on its AP shells, and that just quite simply won't cut it in higher tiers, and we all know how generous matchmaking can be sometimes. Your best option is, in my opinion, the 75mm Waffe, where you gain 157mm of average penetration at the cost of a lot of your alpha damage. You will definitely appreciate the better penetration, I guarantee you. And despite the much lower alpha, this gun has actually the higher DPM thanks to its buffed rate of fire. Good news is, in the lower tiers, your armor will work better, allowing you to fully utilize your DPM, while in the higher tiers, at least now you will be able to penetrate them better. Throughout the review, we will only use the 75mm Waffe for the comparison, so at least now you know why. With all this said, let's have a look at how that firepower compares to some of its counterparts at Tier 6, the M6, the KV-85 and the Churchill 7. As we can see, using the Waffe brings us more or less about on par with the rest of the bunch, both in terms of DPM and in terms of penetration. The style of this gun is definitely similar to the British solution, meaning lower alpha damage but increased rate of fire, and let me assure you, almost 15 of these shells in a minute will leave a mark on the enemy for sure. As for the secondary stats, we can find the staple, very solid German characteristics that you would perhaps expect of this gun. Good aim time at 2.2 seconds, very good accuracy at only 0.33 meters dispersion, and excellent gun depression with 8 degrees in total. This tank can definitely be a precise sniper when the situation calls for it. Now moving on to the protection, we can see the issue right away that many people will have with this heavy tank. While the actual armor values are not out of line compared to other heavies in this tier, the boxy design typical for the early German heavies means that you cannot really count on much armor sloping to help you out. From the front, the upper plate has a massive flat surface that's easily penetrated from 100mm and up, And the center of the turret is actually a weak spot as well around the gun with only 100 mm of protection. And on top of all of this, you have that very prominent cupola on top of the tank with 80 mm of armor at best. The sides and rear are all around 80 mm on the turret and 60 on the hull, and everything is flat as a pancake once again without any spaced armor, giving you rather limited protection. Sure, you can and should angle, but don't expect wonders, especially against larger guns. Really, this armor will be mostly good against mediums and lights of the same tier and lower. For anything else, it's best to play it carefully in a support role. Your gun is at least good enough for that. Moving on to mobility, we can't really be amazed here either, I'm afraid. And before you get overly excited about the 50 km/h top speed, you better realize that you only have a 500 horsepower engine to make that happen. Unfortunately, with only 12 horsepower per ton power-to-weight ratio, you are rather sluggish. And the fact that you have one of the worst terrain resistances from all the heavies won't really help you out in this regard either. Also, both the turret and the tank traverse speed at 25 and 24 degrees respectively are on the slowish side, though they are still about manageable. And at last, finally, we have some good news for the end. Both your view range at 370 meters and your signal range at 740 meters is actually very good, so you have at least these going for you. Camo, well, it is what it is. It shouldn't really concern you in something as big as this heavy tank. So then, what do we have? A good, accurate sniper gun, limited armor, not too bright mobility, but it's not a really impressive summary, is it? Well, there is a reason why so many people dislike this machine after all, but it's not as hopeless perhaps as they make it sound. It's just one of those machines that really has to adjust to the matchmaking if they want to be successful. When you are top tier, against most opponents you can play as a real heavy. When you are not, you should be mostly supporting, not sniping from the base though, mind you. Equipment-wise, I would suggest to slap a gun rammer on this thing to maximize your DPM, as it's one of your main strengths after all, and also use vents for that really nice general buff. As for the third slot, I personally use the gun laying drive because you know that I'm a sucker for short aim times, but since 2.2 seconds is really not that bad to begin with, you might want to consider something else as well. As weird as it might sound, binoculars might be useful in a support role, especially since you already have a rather good base view range to begin with. As for crew skills, I would say the heavy tank standard, repairs, sixth sense and brothers in arms should be a safe enough starting point. Alright, this was then a quick look at the VK3601H sitting on the German tech tree. I think it's high time to take it out for a spin so it can finally prove itself. Alright, so here we are in the infamous VK3601H. The matchmaking gods have really smiled on us tonight, because on this simple standard match on Winter Ruinberg, we are one of the very few tier 6 heavies, and everything we will be shooting at will be mostly tier 5s and some tier 4s. Which means, finally, we get to play this thing as a real heavy. Now, as mentioned during the review, this is one of those machines where you really have to be aware of the situation before you roll out from the cap circle. If you would be going up against tier 7s or tier 8s, since this machine definitely doesn't have preferential matchmaking, you really have to stick to a support role and rely on your very accurate sniper gun. So it's not that you would be useless, but you just have to know your place. Right now, however, we can definitely go and stick us in the middle of it and rely on our amazing rate of fire, which is just about 15 rounds a minute. It's not too shabby. The only thing we have to be careful about are the tier 6s, so of course the first thing we encounter is the tier 6 enemy heavy tank, the KV-85. And whoa, he definitely missed that one, which is really good. And look at this rate of fire. By the time he gets to reload, we completely chew him up, even set his engine on fire. And with that shot, he is out. And that was 870 damage with a little bit of fire that we racked up in a couple of seconds. That's how dangerous this gun is, if you let it shoot. Now, talking about letting it shoot, we are actually rather safe from that Chinook eye. We are not impenetrable, but from this distance, our armor should hold up really nicely against it. And, oh, what's this? It's a very, let's call it brave. M5A1 Stuart, and oh, that was very unfortunate. He was left on such low health. And this Chinukai is also very eager to take a couple more shots from it, and that was actually a rather unfortunate thing. It's one of the weaknesses of the German heavies, is that your engine will get knocked out a lot from frontal shots. Unfortunately, something you have to learn to deal with. It seems that we get the attention from this tier 6 enemy as well. It's not much on the team, but all seems to be focusing on us. It's the Soviet medium, the T-3485, a really good machine. So I don't really want to get shot by him, because he's one of the few guys who definitely won't have trouble going through my armor. He was engaged from the other side, so I push forward, but he's still focusing in this direction. He even repairs his tracks, which is not good news. But once again, using our rate of fire, and oops, he missed that one. Our rate of fire means that we do get to take him out. He missed his chance. And oh, there was the third tier 6 machine. Infamous bird. So, surviving the attention of all of the tier 6s, we were able to put up quite a fight. 3 kills, well over 2000 damage, and as we can see from the result, quite a lot blocked as well. VK3601H, in the right circumstances, king of the hill. So, this was a truly fast and furious replay with the VK3601H, ace tanker in just over 3 minutes. The fact that we could not just ace it but also get a high caliber medal inflicting over 2000 damage and the steel wall bouncing over 1000 damage in such a short time is a really good indicator what this machine is capable of, in the right circumstances of course. Using the 75mm Waffe definitely paid off in this match, as we could put that rate of fire to really good use, resulting in about 2250 damage and over 1100 base XP, all of which was worth over 43,000 credits. Overall we fired 21 shots in this short time, out of which 19 hit the target and 16 penetrated as well. Not bad, and it could have been even better with a bit better aiming from my part. Our armor did hold up really nicely as well. We managed to bounce 8 of the 12 shots received, blocking about 1100 damage. Not too shabby. Alright, this was my quick review of the underrated tier 6 German heavy tank, the VK3601H. I hope you did like it. If you did, thanks a lot for considering giving it a like or sharing it. Next week I will be away on business trip again to the UK this time, so we will have a little bit of reduced content. Don't worry though, I have a few videos already prepared for you. Enjoy your weekend guys, have some really relaxing games, and I look forward seeing you again next week.